Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Recovery Stories. My name is Patrick Custer, and I'm your host. I'm also the National Director of Alumni Services for Promises Behavioral Health, who brings you this podcast every week of stories of recovery, hope, and struggles. Today, we've got a special guest. I can't wait to introduce him right after this brief message. We are live in
Stop Facebook.
where a number of people
The opportunity to share.
She's one of our own.
They aren't like
Parts to your story that's awesome. You found healing. You found.
until I got sober.
Can't wait for her to share the different aspects of your story and what. Awesome.
Right.
All right, welcome back, everybody. So excited to introduce our guest, Phil Bogard from Rock to Recovery is here to share his story. We've been really pumped about this day for a while now, and to bring this to you. Phil, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have made quite an impact on a lot of people in a lot of different areas, and I know especially with our organization, and I've gotten to be a part of some of that, and I'm excited to get to that piece to talk about what you're doing today. But like many of us, including myself, you've got a story of your own that led you to the path of your life today, and I'm excited to get to that. So with that, I want to turn the floor over to you and let you kick it off.
Well, fantastic. Well, hey, my name is Phil, and I am alcoholic. I spend a lot of my time starting off conversations, not conversations, but monologues that way. So yeah, my story definitely has been all over the map, and I do have a story to tell, especially regarding addiction and alcoholism. If you were to build a pyramid out of my addiction, alcohol would be the solid base upon which the whole thing is built. And alcohol is what brought me to my bottom. It is the drug that almost killed me. It is the drug of choice for me. However, I did try almost all the drugs at least 2 times. Some of them way more than twice, just to make sure I didn't love them. But alcohol was the one that was like my true master that really tore me down, drug me down to the bottom. So anyway, I starting at the beginning, I had a pretty picturesque, American dream childhood. My parents were high school sweethearts that got married. My parents stayed married. My dad just passed away within this last year. My parents never split up. There was nothing terribly turbulent in our household. It was nothing but happy memories. I think when my drug use started, right in like my early adolescent age, going through puberty, I just felt weird and awkward and different. And I think that's typical of every kid. I think that's part of the human experience. The solution I found was to take drugs, to drink, And when I was young, when I was 11 years old, we moved from Memphis, Tennessee up to York, Pennsylvania. And that's a pretty drastic jump to make across the country. It's a culture, a different experience. You know what I mean?
I haven't been very many places in Pennsylvania, but I've been to York.
You have been to York. I remember y'all went right when the pandemic started. I feel like. I remember seeing online, like, how'd y'all get somewhere?
Yeah.
York, PA. Well, that's where I grew up. That's where I did 6th to 11th grade. So I say I grew up because I feel, to me, that feels like the ages that you grow up. But I did middle and high school, most of high school up in York, Pennsylvania. And again, like there was, I can't think of any like real serious trauma that took place. My drug use, I started like smoking pot at an early age. I took acid at an early age. I've always said that I'm kind of like this weird chunk of the age in which I lived and the age in which, I got into drugs I live in this weird little bubble where everybody that I was friends with back then, like there was no pills for us to take. That pills just wasn't a thing, you know, like what it became later and what it had been prior. Like I came too late for Quaaludes and all that, and I came too early for Oxy and all that. So when I was a kid, I mean, it was really street drugs. It was pot, acid, you know, if you were really wild, cocaine. Um, and as a kid, I just smoked a lot of pot. You know, the way that I really usually when I focus on telling my story, or how I focus on addiction and telling my story, this is really where it takes shape. Is that all my life, from the time I was 8 years old, I knew exactly what I was going to do with my life. I knew exactly who I was going to be. I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and that was I was going to stand behind a guitar for a living. Not only was I going to stand behind a guitar, I was going to be a rock and roll star. You know what I mean? I watched, you know, Oliver Stone's take on Jim Morrison. Um, I grew up listening to all the classic rock and then everything that was current. I mean, I just loved and adored music more than anything on the planet. And that's all I wanted. And there was no plan B for me. Like there was no second option. And you know, my parents, guidance counselors, teachers, whomever was out there trying to convince me to have a plan B, you know, I may have played along for a minute, but there really never was a plan B. That's all there ever was. I was going to be doing that. And somehow a lot of the universe threw some really huge opportunities my way early in life. And, you know, I did end up getting a major label record deal when I was really young. And prior to that, just fell in with a really good manager and some childhood friends. We started this little rock and roll band out of Memphis. And all of a sudden, you know, we were 19, 20-year-old kids, and, you know, we're standing in front of thousands of people some nights, you know, and then the next night standing in front of 10 people playing, you know, but getting to ride around in a van, you know, hauling a trailer full of musical equipment, playing frat parties one night, and then, you know, open up for Blues Traveler in front of, you know, 50,000 people the next night. It was a very turbulent ride, and it was wild, and it was incredible. And I suffered from severe stage fright. And so that was never, you know, part of the equation in this dream that I had, in this existence that I had, in this plan that I formulated in my head for so long. You know, I'd never taken into account something like that. So when I would get in these really big moments, you know, especially those really big shows with these huge crowds, I would get up there and be so petrified. I mean, like cripplingly frozen from stage fright, where my hands would shake so bad I couldn't hardly play the guitar. Right. Well, so what would happen is I learned that if I drank a couple beers, you know, if I drank 2 to 4 beers, that would ease the shakes. Right. That would give me the confidence I need to feel like something between, you know, Keith Richards and Slash. Right. And I could run around and, you know, throw kicks in the air and play the guitar and stomp around on stage like the star that I felt like I was born to play, that role that I was born to play. Right. And like with anything, you know, when we find that solution, I began to abuse it. You know, it became the solution to everything. You know, I truly believe that the way addiction works, I think, you know, some of us are predisposed. I think that there's definitely, you know, we learn more and more about brain science all the time. We learn more about, you know, the allergy, you know, that they talk about in you know, 12 steps. But I think that the doorway that I walk through, what I truly believe is the moment that alcohol became the solution to a problem, that was the gateway, you know, through which I walked, and there was no turning back. You know, something switch got flipped in my head. And from then on, it was encoded in my DNA at that moment. From the rest of forever, it was, you know, at the cellular level, you know, my existence said, oh, there's the solution. That's the solution for things. And so never mind the fact that it would then cause problems to which, you know, I needed a solution. And of course, you know, I know what the solution is because I already found it. It's it's a liquid solution. You pour it on top of everything. So, you know, 2 beers turned to 4, turned to 8, turned to 12, turned to 16 very rapidly, you know, very quickly. I was 22 years old. And I woke up with the alcoholic shakes every day at the age of 22. That's pretty young to be a full-blown alcoholic. By age 22, I was drinking at least 18 beers a day. And that's a lot. That's a lot for anybody any age, but that's a lot
Yeah.
for a 22-year-old to get to that spot. Um, but I needed those beers to get on stage. I needed that alcohol to get on stage. I needed that to be the performer I was supposed to be, right? And then I'd get off the stage and create some messes because I was inebriated, because I was drunk, because it fired off some of the worst parts of my personality hidden inside me, right? It caused situations and embarrassments. And so, the next day when I'm feeling the pain and suffering and shame and guilt, I need a solution for all that. And like I said, I found my solution. You pour alcohol on top of it, and then it becomes a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
So yeah, very rapidly at that young age, I was to that level, and on a pretty fast track at that time to some success in the music world. We never became a household name, but we racked up a lot of accolades, and we got as close as you can get without crossing that line. We did end up signing a major label record deal in 2003. We had 2 top 40 songs at Hot AC radio format. We had 3 placements in major motion pictures, 2 on network television. We got to play Jimmy Kimmel Live.
That's awesome.
We played the Fox Morning Show that runs at the time ran at the same time as Good Morning America and Today. We got to tour with really big bands like Maroon 5, Gavin DeGraw, John Mayer, Jason Mraz.
Wow.
And then like some 90s stuff like Collective Soul Live, Sister Hazel Tonic, Better Than Ezra Blues Traveler. Even got to play with Leonard Skinner before, the Allman Brothers, Three Doors Down. Yeah, no, it was a wild ride. And all that time, I am this full blown alcoholic kid that requires that liquid courage it surpasses the point of I needed to get on stage, I needed to perform the way I want to perform, and then it goes further to I needed to be able to go out to the label function. I needed to be able to go to the record label's Christmas party. I needed to be able to go into these radio stations on radio tours and, go pitch our song to the program directors and do these, lunchtime performances. And, before you know it, I'm drinking all the time. I'm drinking around the clock. Where that finally leads is to the place where I need to take a drink to get the trash from my driveway to the end of the street.
Yeah. Were you having people in your life that were intervening, saying, hey, we're concerned, we've noticed this increased pattern? What was that? How's that dynamic playing out?
There was a lot of frothy emotional appeal. There was a lot of frothy emotional appeal in those early days, right? And that's kind of the way, having lived and worked in the music industry most of my adult life, having lived it in my young adult life, I've seen this over and over again, where as long as the path is still on the upward trajectory, as long as there's still success in the windshield, as long as it's still moving up, or at least, maintaining, the world allows it.
Yeah.
Everyone in my life definitely allowed it more. Not everybody loved it. Now, yeah, people, like I said, a lot of frothy emotional appeal. A lot of people said, look, we're not saying you got to stop drinking. Just stop drinking so much. Quit making an ass of yourself. Quit running around, drinking a 5th of vodka a night. You don't have to have a case of beer every single day, right?
Which further supports this idea in the addict's brain that this is a self-control problem and I just need to assert myself further. And not only do I believe that, but the people around me believe that because of what they're saying.
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, again, it was the same talk over and over again. Now, sometimes people would absolutely yell at me. I had a manager that would absolutely scream at me. I mean, scream at me that I drank too much. And the end of that screaming, conversation would end with, just quit drinking so much.
Right.
It was a common conversation that I had. And, to a degree, even, I had a lot of people help me hide it from the folks that didn't need to see it.
Mm.
Sometimes those same people that would yell at me were the same ones that would make sure I had it when I needed it to play the star that I needed to play in those moments, right?
Yep.
To perform the way they needed me to on stage. So, you know, at the end of the day, I take all the accountability for the way I lived and what I did. And I don't blame anybody at all for those conversations of frothy emotional appeal, because they were doing the best they could with what knowledge they had, and they had no education or experience or knowledge of what was actually taking place. You know, to them, they just thought, man, why can't this guy stop drinking so heavily? We all like to drink. We all like to get drunk every now and again. Why can't this guy do it like we do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, which, I mean, yes, it's the natural course of anybody, you know, until a real heavy bottoms hit, you know, and people start saying, "Oh, this is enough. Enough is enough. We're done." So what was what did that look like for you? The path leading up to that and the precipitating event.
Mine was fairly grim, especially for how young I was, and especially for alcohol to have been my primary drug. You know, when I got sober, a lot of the folks that I knew that were early in recovery as well had some drugs that helped raise that bottom, you know, and get it there faster. I shouldn't say raise the bottom, but help speed up the arrival of the bottom.
Yeah.
Mine was so heavily, you know, I was drinking so heavily. It was pretty wild for as young as I was. Again, I have to talk about the career had taken, you know, some strange turns. You know, the music industry is much less sexy than everybody thinks. You know, it's a business. You know, if you ask what happened to that band, you know, why didn't that band become a household name? I have to talk about hostile takeovers and Comcast and Disney, and you know what I mean? It's not sexy. It has to do with a bunch of people in a boardroom. It has to do with, you know, numbers on a bottom line. But the long and short is this record label we were on had changed the model of how they operated, and we didn't fit that model anymore. You know, that upward trajectory had changed, and we were no longer there. And you know, that world became more and more grim, the way I was living. And then people did start holding me to more account the worse I got. And yeah, so to paint the picture of what it looked like in the end, by the time I was 28 years old, I was drinking 2/5 of vodka a day. If I was drinking beer, I was drinking 40 cans of beer a day.
Wow.
That's a lot of cans of beer. That's a lot of trips to the men's room.
Yeah.
My skin was greenish yellow. The whites of my eyes were yellow. If you touched me, I would bruise, and it would spread indefinitely because I was anemic, because my blood was so thin from that much alcohol. Do it all the time. You know, there's lots of other gross things that happen with the body when you put that much chemical in it. I won't go into detail, but you know, I threw up blood every single day.
Wow.
Yeah, I was perpetually in a state of withdrawal. Finally, what happened?
Can you, before we move on to finally what happened, I wanna stop here and ask you what, because this is, I think, something that's really important in everybody's story to stop and talk about. Because no matter how much denial we're in, once we've been sober long enough, it's possible for us to go back and analyze where our brain was and the things that we were believing and things that we knew to be true, but we were in denial about at that time. So take all the stuff that was going on with you. What were the lies that you were believing, and what was your truth, right? So like, you have all of this going on. What were you telling yourself?
Sure.
When you thought, did you realize that the death was either right around the corner or you were going to have to get sober? And did you live with this ultimate fear of, I can't go on, I cannot imagine an eternity without alcohol to cope?
Well, I'll answer that very specifically. So one time I had to go back and this is the way I explain this a lot. So I had to go back and make some amends to people, like we do. We go straighten out our past after we get clean and sober. And there was this chunk of people from my life. It was very interesting to me because, like, the period of my life that I was kind of trying to straighten out with them was not when I was drinking the heaviest, was not when the usage was at its worst. But in a weird way, I was at my worst because I still didn't realize that I had a problem, right? I still was acting as though, that the way I lived was normal. I
Mm.
still couldn't tell the true from the false, right? Um, at the very end, the last like year I was drinking, I had given up. Like, I knew that I wasn't right. I knew that I wasn't okay. I knew that I was a full blown alcoholic. I knew that it was killing me. The lie that I believed that I told myself was that I'm just doing this to me. What ultimately, the place where I arrived was that my band, we had lost our tour bus, right? So we were back to a van. We've gone through all these vans up to the realm of the tour bus and, doing these big tours. And then one of our first trips back in a van after we had that tour support pulled by the label, I didn't take anything to drink. I didn't have anything to drink for about 10 hours.
Mm.
I had a full-blown seizure in the van. I came to with a police officer shining a flashlight in my face, asking me questions to which I should know the answer, right?
Mm.
But I couldn't answer. Like, what's your middle name? How old are you? What day of the week is it? And I couldn't answer these things because I just had a full-blown seizure. I had no idea what was going on. I had just bitten through the sides of my tongue. I had blood coming out of my mouth, because I started that day with a 12-pack of beer. I had a 12-pack of beer for breakfast. And after having 12 beers, I went 10 hours without taking a drink. That's how physically dependent upon alcohol I was at that moment. So by the time I reached that bottom, I was living in a very, very nasty place, where my mental state, I absolutely knew that I was not okay mentally. I absolutely knew that I was not okay spiritually. I absolutely knew that I was falling apart physically. I could not imagine going one more day the way I was living, and I couldn't imagine, going a single day without taking a drink. And the way I lived at that time was I didn't even have days anymore, right?
Yeah.
I had little windows of being awake, because once I crossed that line of having had those seizures, I had two full-blown seizures from withdrawal. And once I crossed that line, once I got over that hump, and realized how dangerous that is, how frequent people die from those seizures. The odds of survival are not in your favor, and that becomes the most petrifying thing. This dream that I had that you have this romantic alcoholic death where you die in a bathtub in Paris, fall asleep and never wake up, when you realize that's not how it works. It's violent and painful and scary, and you bite through your tongue and you feel pain that you've never felt before. You feel parts of your body that you never knew you could feel because it hurts so bad. And then I lived in perpetual fear of that. So I would wake up and I would drink until I passed out, and I would wake up and I would drink until I passed out, and I would do that over and over and over, to the point where if the light was this right here and it was 7:30, I didn't know if it was 7:30 a.m. or 7:30 p.m. I didn't know.
Yeah.
It felt like 3 days was a 24-hour cycle, because I just woke up 3 different times. I no longer had like a healthy little like, hey, we're having a good time buzz, right?
Yeah.
Either I was shaking so violently, I was going to knock my teeth out trying to get alcohol into my system, or you have to help me walk across the room because I'm that drunk I can't walk. There was no good window anymore. It was a very grim place to be, and to be at that place at age 28 is definitely a rarity.
Yeah.
I had this weird existence because I was a musician for a living, so I was afforded an opportunity to drink on the job that most people aren't. Right? I was afforded the opportunity to drink amounts that most people aren't. But yeah, it was a pretty grim place to be. And for whatever reason, I had the realization finally. I wished for death, right? I mean, that's where I was going with that. Is at this point, every time I woke up, I was angry. I woke up, and I wished for death. I wanted that to just close my eyes and not wait. I wanted the suffering, the physical pain to be over. I wanted the humiliation, the shame, the all of it, the disappointment that I had become to myself. Just wanted it all to end. It was like a lightning bolt to my face in this moment where I realized that it wasn't me that would suffer for that, right? that there were people on this planet connected to me by way of love, blood, however the universe brought us together, that would suffer every last moment for the rest of their lives because of decisions I made and actions I took. And that was like the real, that lightning bolt moment where the lie that I'm just doing this to myself wasn't believable to me anymore. Right. And so like the way that I phrase this all the time is now all of a sudden I was more screwed than I'd ever been, because not only could I not live this way, now I couldn't die this way. Right now, dying this way was unacceptable. So now what do? I can't live this way and I can't die this way. All I have left is to pick up a phone and scream, please help, please. Where all that came to a head was the lead singer of my old band coming to my house. And I've told this story so many times, but, the quick version of what happened is this is a guy that I've known since kindergarten, actually before kindergarten.
Wow.
And he came over to my house. He didn't pitch it to me like I thought he was going to. I knew a talk was coming. I knew it was, I thought it was one of the familiar talks that we'd had. I thought it was, going to be about the business. I thought it was going to be about, the damage that I was doing to the art, to our product, and to the business. And it wasn't. He was like, you know what? None of that matters. Absolutely none of that matters. It's not fair that you expect me to watch you commit suicide. I would never do that to you. How dare you do that to me? If this is what you have to do, you can't do this around me. That's what I have to ask you. If this is the road you have to take and there's nothing I can say or do to change your mind, you can't do it in front of me, because that's not fair. And all, and it was a perfect storm. It was all the walls closed in at the same time, with the job, with the family, with the associates, with everything. And with the realizations, the universe does what it does, and all the walls closed in at exactly the right moment for me to pick up the phone. When I was a kid, my mom worked at a mental health facility that's a rehab facility in Memphis. She didn't work in the rehab part. She worked with the adolescents with behavioral health. Mm-hmm. But literally, I picked up the phone. I said, I need to go to rehab. And I thought I need to go to that place. They didn't want me to go to that place, not because it's a knock on that place. I used to go, when I still lived in Memphis, I would go and speak and share my story. And I would always explain that they didn't want me going here, not as a knock on this place. It's because if my car hadn't started, I still could have got here on time to tell my story, because that's how close I lived to it. I lived, a half a mile away from it. So if I had decided I wanted to go home at any point, it's pretty easy to walk out the door. Even if they stole my shoes, I still could have got home safely,
Yeah.
But they packed me up and they sent me up here to Nashville. I went to a facility up here called Cumberland Heights. I gained 28 pounds in 28 days. And I was shown that there was a solution, but that it would require a lot of work after I left rehab. The greatest thing they did for me was convince me that that going to a 28-day program was just the first stepping stone in the lifetime of work to be done.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah. They really forced it upon me. Like, hey, you're doing a great thing, and you're getting ahead of the curve, right? This is your first step, and the real work comes when you leave here. The real work comes practicing principles.
So true, and we've gotten to see a lot of that play out. A lot of that get tested for so many of us this last year when life got hard through the pandemic. So post-treatment life choices, what happened?
Well, I don't go too far down the rabbit hole of discussing a lot of 12-step stuff, but I am a proponent of 12-step solutions. They don't want anybody's endorsement, so I don't endorse. But I'm a proponent, especially in the field with which I work, of 12-step solutions. I know a lot of people, myself included, find a path to stability and recovery in those 12-step solutions. And that was a big piece of my story. That was a huge thing. Again, like I said, I got the jump start by going to a treatment facility, and then I was sent out into the world where the work had to be done. And basically, I had to operate in the world with a brand new code of ethics, a brand new map for which to guide myself.
Yeah.
It was a different experience. I never could have gone right back to work the way I did. Now, I stayed home. My band toured for about 2 months, I think, without me total, like the month I was in treatment and then a month after. And then, I had 2 months sober, and I went out on a full United States tour.
Wow.
Where we started in Mississippi, worked our way all the way over Southern California, all the way up to Seattle, and then all the way back across. So it was a 2-month tour, living in a van. And without that particular group of guys, I never could have done that. You talk about kid gloves and, just really them going out of their way to make sure I was okay, anything I needed. If I needed to find my way to a 12-step function in between sound check and showtime, it happened. It was made sure that it happened. It was a beautiful time in my life. I had a guy that walked me through the 12 steps that is still a lifelong friend. It was a different experience. It was I had to learn how to live life without my closest ally, without without that thing that had always been there.
Yeah, it's a big thing for pretty much all of us. But especially I think for musicians that are still in your case, like go right back out to the world of traveling and playing and things. You almost feel like you're naked in a blizzard. Because I would think, I don't have personal experience at doing what you did post treatment, but that I can imagine that would have been hard.
Well, I'll tell you this. So I went right back to work, and whether you believe in God, whether you believe in a spirit of the universe, whatever you want to call it, I believe there's something to that. I believe there's something out there. I believe because of the experiences I've had, because of the grace that I've been given. And just to be honest, I went back to work, and all of a sudden, this thing that I had built up for so long that there's no way I could get up there and do that. All of a sudden I could do it. All of a sudden I could do it with ease, right? I was able to get up on stage and play that part and be who I wanted to be and do that thing. And for 2.5 years, it was seamless. I was like, I don't understand how did I become so, captured by this fear and this fright that, I almost killed myself, and it's non-existent. And then when I was about 2.5 years clean and sober, I was standing on stage. I was playing this thing in Mississippi, this big festival with about 10 or 15,000 people out there. And just on stage playing, and I blinked in the middle of one of the songs. I blinked, and I saw the words written out when I blinked. It was the weirdest thing, and I saw them in type. Like the title of the book, Misery?
No.
All right, Stephen King has a book called Misery. It was a movie with Kathy Bates.
Okay.
If you look at the title, it's in like old typewriter type. I saw just like that in typewriter type. I saw the word faint, F-A-I-N-T, period.
Wow.
Just when I blinked, I saw the word faint, and I went, why did I just see the word faint? Why did I just think the word faint? Am I going to faint? I think I'm going to faint. Right? And all of a sudden I got a little woozy. I started feeling like lightheaded. I didn't faint at all. But at 2.5 years sober, all of a sudden I had my first freak out on stage, my first stage fright panic. And it went to a level that consumed me beyond what it ever had that started the drinking.
Because you thought it was going to happen again over and over.
I had this relapse of fear. I didn't take a drink, but I had a relapse of fear. I had a relapse of stage fright. And all of a sudden, I was more miserable than I had ever been.
Wow.
trying to get on stage every single night. It wasn't that just one show. All of a sudden, it captured me again. I became completely suffocated, completely physically crippled by this stage fright all over again.
Yeah.
Right? All back to square one. So I talk about that grace. There was some grace for those first 2.5 years. And I think had I come out of treatment, had I tried to go back to work and that come upon me like that, I don't know that I'd be sitting here having a conversation. You know?
Wow.
Those
So sorry. What did you do, as that continued from there?
So I lived in this sheer panic. I stopped sleeping well. I spent all day, every day on tour, just petrified of getting back on stage that night. I reached out to other musicians I knew that were sober and discussed it. I looked for all kinds of magic bullets, to be honest with you. I tried to pinpoint, okay, where in some 12-step work can I focus and figure out what the problem is? How can I figure out what exactly I need to be doing? I was 12-stepping homeless people behind the clubs. You know what I mean?
Wow.
I was doing anything I could. I was running around trying. Maybe I need to make more amends and straighten out more of my past. Maybe I need to dig deeper on a self inventory, right? And I was looking for this I don't know, this magic bullet solution, right? I was on tour with this band, and this went on for months. I mean, like maybe 3 to 6 months that I was just miserable living this way. And I'll never forget, I was on tour with this band from Pittsburgh called the Clarks, and we played this show with them, this sold out theater, this huge crowd. And it was in between us and them going on stage. And I was watching one of the guys in the band who was drinking a Corona. And Corona's in a clear bottle, right? So you can actually see the golden color of the beer, and you stick a lime down in there. And I watched him chug a whole beer, and you can watch it the beer travels through the lime and the way the bubbles do. I mean, it looked like a beer commercial just watching him drink. It was so perfectly orchestrated and just beautiful, and the light hit it just right. And me watching him drink that, I could feel the fear and tension in me start to leave just watching him drink that, right?
Wow.
So I called my friend that had walked me through this work, that had helped me so much. And he didn't answer. And he shot me a text. He was like, "Hey, I'm in a meeting. Do you need me to step outside?" And that was kind of our protocol when I would call him. And in the 2.5 years that I've been working with him, I never once said, "Yes, step outside." This was the time I said, "Yes, step outside." This is when I really freaked out.
Yeah.
I explained to him what happened. He said, "Well, that's great news." And I said, "What do you mean that's great news?" He said, "Well, now we know what your problem is." I said, "Well, please share, because I'm eager to know." He said, "It's alcoholism." I said, "Well, thanks a lot, jerk." He said, "But no, don't you see the good news? We already know the solution to that."
Yeah.
Right. And there was a realization that at the cellular level, alcoholism, right? At the cellular level, it will always be, coming at me. It will always be trying to find a way to resurface, right? It will always be, trying to find something to which I will need a solution.
Yeah.
Any sense?
Absolutely.
But ultimately what happened with that, there was no magic bullet solution. It was something that took a little time that I had to work through. And the beginning was, taking the first step of realizing I have a problem with this and my life's out of control because of it, right? Realizing that this is a way that alcoholism is going to try to get at me. That addiction is trying to, resurface in a way.
Yeah.
One of the funniest moments in the middle of all this that little by little, just instead of, frantically trying to cure this magically, instantly. And, I had a few key moments, where people gave me some good advice that I could try to hone in on. And even though I'd be petrified and scared, but just keep moving forward, keep working a program in front of me and doing everything I could to not take a drink over this. Kind of a final moment with it where it really kind of came to this end where it wasn't such a big thing anymore, was playing this huge show. I mean, I don't even know how many people were there. It was open up for Leonard Skinner, of all things.
Wow.
in Louisiana. And I mean, over 30,000 people in this outdoor crowd. And I said something to my drummer at the time. I was like, man, like, I'm really freaked out about this. And he said, I know, it's awesome, isn't it? I said, what do you mean? He's like, who gets this big of an adrenaline rush going to work without literally having to risk your life? Like, the only other people that really get this that get this much of a jacked up heartbeat adrenaline rush have to risk their life, for their job. Like, we're spoiled, we're lucky. It's like we get to jump out of an airplane for a living, and like all of a sudden just hearing him and the way he saw it, was a big turning point. So I was able to move on from that. Not to say that I don't still suffer from stage fright, because I definitely do. I do a lot of public speaking with my job. I tell my story a lot, and plenty of times I get up there and I'm petrified to get started. And what I've learned, from working this solution is, I just continue to walk through it. I haven't fainted. I haven't fainted on stage ever. It was a very false fear that just kind of popped up in my head, but nothing incredibly terrible has ever happened. I've just been able to keep moving forward a little bit.
That's awesome. So you talked about that fear of fainting, fear of the stage fright and what have you. And so you've got that going on one hand, and then we have this other knowledge about how good and useful and therapeutic music is and can be. And so I want to talk some about how you get to use that today to facilitate the healing process in other people.
Absolutely. And I'd be remiss to not kind of, I'll breeze through real quick the tail end of my music career. Not even the tail end, the second half of my music career. I packed everything up, moved from Memphis to Nashville, and I started working with a hip hop artist when I got here named Jelly Roll. Who is ginormously huge right now. He just had an incredibly big song. But this man hired me because I was clean and sober, like quite literally. I really loved what he was doing musically. I really wanted to be a part of it. I shared the vision, and in trying to sell myself to him and give him my accolades, he wasn't interested that I had toured with Maroon 5 and Gavin DeGraw, right? Like, he didn't care. He didn't see how that fit into what he was doing. But when he found out that at that moment I was 6 years clean and sober, he was like, whoa, I need you on my team. Like, that you're the kind of people I need. That struck him. That struck him instantly. He became interested in me. He became interested in my story, and he wanted people on his team that weren't going to, cost, steal, or lose money based on active addiction. He wanted people who believed in personal growth and spiritual growth, right?
Yeah.
And so my sobriety afforded me so much opportunity with him that I got to be number 2 in command on kind of the artistic side of what he was doing. I got to be the band leader of that organization,
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, it was a wild ride. I got to work with like some hip hop legends like Cypress Hill and Insane Clown Posse and, Yellow Wolf, Struggle Jennings. It was a wild ride. And then I did a stint with a country act that had a hit single on the radio. And I got to tour arenas with them, playing with like Kane Brown, Lee Bryce, Jake Owen, Gary Allen, that kind of that caliber of artist. And it was all because I was clean and sober. That's when I do the Rocks recovery sessions, I really focus more on the second half of my career, because that's where the solution exists. All the opportunities I was afforded. The way I kind of explain a Rocks recovery session is if the universe wasn't a kind place, I would just be a cautionary tale. You know what I mean? He'd be like, oh, this guy had all this stuff and he drank it away. What a sad story. But the universe is a kind place. And if you throw love at the universe, it'll throw some love back at you. It doesn't always feel like it, but it's been my experience that it is. And so I really focus on that latter half where I got second, third, fourth, and fifth shots at success in the music industry. Not in spite of being clean and sober, but because I was. Nobody threw me a bone and said, I get, even though you can't hang out and have a beer with the rest of us, we're going to give you a shot. It was the opposite. Like, I was afforded these opportunities because of the accountability I had, because people, respected who I was, what I stood for, and the way that I lived.
How cool is that?
Yeah, no, it was a wild ride, and I had a good time. And for whatever reason, I felt in me a shift, and after 20 years of bouncing down the road for a living, I was just looking for the next thing in life, and I didn't know what it was. I had always had a relationship with Music Cares, which is the charitable arm of the Grammys. And I was just, I had played not Coachella, Stagecoach, the country version of Coachella. So I played Stagecoach and ran into I went and said hey to all the Music Cares people there. And the lady that was running the LA office at the time, Erica Cruzen, was like, hey, give me a shout. On I was coming up on 10 years sober. And she was like, give me a shout. I want to tell you happy birthday. And so I did. And then, that happy birthday conversation became me having a midlife crisis and where do I go from here? And I had heard about this program called Rock to Recovery. And I was asking her, I was like, have you heard of this thing? I don't even know what it's called, but it's the guitarist from the band Korn. And he does something, I don't know. And she said, are you talking about Rock to Recovery? And I was like, yeah, that's it. And she said, well, I'm on the board of directors. And I was like, well, man, give me an intro. And she said, I just sent the email already. And within a few hours of her sending that email, there was a plane ticket purchase for me to go train in LA and learn how to do this particular brand of music-assisted therapy. So basically, I went from touring the country to touring the Nashville area. Instead of running into, everything from clubs to arenas, now I'm all over from, drug and alcohol treatment centers to long-term mental health facilities to, we also work with veterans. And we carry this form of music-assisted therapy that's, we get everyone in our group to, especially non-musicians. We really specialize in, working with non-musicians, though it's absolutely okay if there's ringers in the room. If there's musicians there, it's, it works swimmingly, but it's designed to get non-musicians playing instruments, and then we write and record an original song in every single session. And it starts with a therapeutic check-in, a topic of discussion, and that's what we pull, our lyrics from. Honestly, the funny part that always strikes me is how incredibly successful and quick we are at writing these songs when we do that kind of thing. And all the songwriting sessions that I've taken part in over the years, out on Music Row, it's just funny how when we start with this therapeutic, check-in, how much smoother and quickly it leads down that path, of lyrical content.
I have to say that. So I've gotten to be part of two of those sessions, and both times it is truly kind of mesmerizing how it all comes together, and the magic that happens in that process, because you see so many different dynamics play out between teamwork to walls coming down of people working together that maybe just because of social cues or differences and things like that would not have chosen to partner up or share their opinions and thoughts and contributions with each other in a collaborative effort. And it's one of the most beautiful things.
I thank you. I agree. It's, and Wes Geer is the founder and CEO of Rock to Recovery. He played guitar for Korn for a little while. He had a band called Head PE before that. That's literally why he started this program. Was what he found when he was in rehab was when he broke his guitar out, and they would be kind of like, plunking around making like goofy country songs out in California, making fun of us here in I'm just kidding. But yeah, like cutting up and having fun. Like all of a sudden, that guy that he didn't like, he didn't know why he didn't like him. He just like, I don't like that guy. But all of a sudden, it broke down this wall, and now they're writing a song together, and it's funny, and now they're friends, and they had no reason to not like each other, but we're just weird territorial creatures, and that's how we are.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, what it's really about to me is getting on the other side of discomfort. It's incredibly, and it's awesome when you have some musicians in there, because you get spoiled and you can put someone to work playing a part and you get this really good, well-crafted song. But my favorite thing are the people who are intimidated by the whole thing and don't want to take part, and watching them get on the other side of it. You know, watching someone who would never, my joke that I say is nobody woke up today and said, I'm going to be the lead singer in Rehab today. Right. But if you look at the person who was the lead singer in Rehab today, I mean, they're glowing. They have just gotten on the other side of discomfort, right? They just got this huge relief, and then they got this spiritual growth because of it. You know, and what we're doing in these sessions, you know, the goal is just to show people, you know, in a fun, silly way, sometimes not always silly, but in a fun way, right? To show people that you can get on the other side of discomfort. On the other side of that discomfort comes relief, and on the other side of the relief comes spiritual growth. You know, because the hardest things I've had to do in my life are the ones that cause me to grow. The speech I give at the end of every session is that I have a terminal illness, right? Addiction is going to kill me. Addiction is going to kill me if I don't grow spiritually. And unfortunately, there's no room in my comfort zone for spiritual growth. I cannot grow if I stay in my comfort zone. You know,
the truth, man.
So, you know, the most uncomfortable things, you know, singing in Rehab is not comfortable, but you know, what's really uncomfortable is when I had to tell a grown man all the secrets I was going to take to the grave. That didn't fit in my comfort zone. Or running out into the world and straightening out all the messes I created was certainly uncomfortable. Admitting to myself, to the universe, to God, to my family, that I'm an alcoholic, that I'm a drug addict, that my life is unmanageable is the most uncomfortable thing I've ever done in my life. But it was the biggest relief I ever got. It was the biggest spiritual growth on the other side of all those, you know. So when we write a song together, when we get people who weren't necessarily comfortable to sit behind the piano or to sit behind the guitar or to get on the microphone, when we get them on the other side of that and they see that they can do it, right? When they accomplish something together as a team, as a group, like you said, it pulls down some walls. It gets people who didn't want to work together all of a sudden collaborating, you know? Yeah. And most importantly, my goal is to show them like, hey, I just really tricked you into growing spiritually. You know, do you see how much better you feel? Because really, you know, when we play music, when we sing, especially, we release serotonin in our brain, right? We kick off the good feeling chemicals, you know, serotonin, oxytocin, dopamine. Those are the chemicals that get fired off when we sing, we play music. So we're getting naturally high when we do it. Mm-hmm. That's another joke that I make is I came to Rehab to get you high, you know, but the natural kind of high, the good kind of high, you know? And so we get on the other side of one of these sessions, everybody's naturally high because they just created this song. They got the chemicals flowing in their brain, right? We can't fight the brain science. It is what's happening. Yep. And then you get to point out to them like, and you know, we just snuck in a little bit of spiritual growth on you. Like, you know, we pulled you out of that comfort zone and now you're better for it, you know? Absolutely.
Well, you know, I have to say, I feel like there's almost no possible way to capture the true, the spiritual impact and magic that happens in one of those sessions. But there's a really cool video you guys have that does a pretty good job of painting some of the picture. And I'd like to share it with our viewers today here real quick. So let me pull that up 1 second. Man, the energy excitement that video shows, I think just like I said, it's at the tip of the iceberg, but really cool to get to share that with everybody, because it's real. It's not just like a soundbite or sometimes when you see a trailer to a movie, they show all the good parts in the thing. I would say it's quite the opposite with that. Really, it's only a little piece of what the amazingness of what Rock to Recovery is. So I'm grateful for you guys and all that you're doing in our world of helping people, and it's a really cool thing. So we're almost out of time, and I wanted to ask you. I asked all of our guests the same question to that man or woman, person who is suffering similarly to how you did, and maybe identifies with some of the things that you talked about today. What last piece of encouragement would you like to leave with them?
I think the thing that scared me, I talk a lot about fear, and fear was, the motivating factor, that just being petrified. And at the end of the day, the scariest thing for me at the tail end of all that was coming to the end of that life. I was so scared to put it down. Like, as awful and miserable as I was, as physically and spiritually, emotionally and mentally sick as I was still beyond petrified to put it down. I could not imagine facing life without it. And I've never gotten more relief from anything in the world than from letting go. That was the greatest, most beautiful feeling. Foundations used to have an IOP program here in Nashville, Foundations Recovery Network. And I used to do a session, and the staff member that would be in there with us, the counselor that would be in there, was the guy that checked me into rehab.
Oh, wow.
And just to kind of sum this up, every time I looked at him, reminded me of the absolute worst day of my life, where I was more broken than I'd ever been, where I was in more physical pain than I'd ever experienced in my life. I hated myself. I hated the universe. I hated my place in the world. I'd never felt shame that deep. I'd never felt anything so awful. And every time I looked at him, it would bring me back to that day. It would make me smile. It would make me smile because it's also one of my favorite days in my whole life. Mm-hmm. It's also one of my favorite days because it's the day that I let go. It's the day that I finally turned loose of all that and said, you know what? I'm ready for help. I'm ready to make a change. What do I got to do? Please help.
That's
so
awesome.
So when I look back on like the worst day of my life, it's also one of my favorite days ever. So
very cool. I love that.
Letting go. That's I gave you the longest answer to a simple question, but letting go.
Perfect. Very perfect. All right. Well, I'm going to leave everybody with it's something that I like to a final thought every one of these episodes. If you're struggling and need help, if you can only do one thing today, I would ask that you find somebody you trust and tell them that you are struggling. Because addiction and destructive behaviors thrive in silence and in secrecy. And taking one step at a time begins with that piece of telling somebody else and asking for help. So thanks again, Phil, so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And with that, I want to remind everybody to love one another and be kind to yourselves.